Over the last 25 years in Jamaica, crime has occupied a central place in media articles, as well as public and political debate. This has led over time to crime-oriented legislation and more recently zones of special operations and states of emergencies across the island. Crime, justice and policing are issues that affect a wide range of stakeholders and places significant demands on government and the public sector. A collective approach is being taken by all stakeholders to reduce and eventually eliminate crime from the island. Marlon Samuels has more in this report.
Collective efficacy is the shared belief that a group can use its collective resources to organize and execute the courses of action required to produce given results. In this case, a reduction in crime. On Monday, August 3, 2020, civil society groups, academia, private sector groups, trade unions, the church and leaders of both political parties attended the National Consensus Summit on Crime in downtown Kingston.
Public disorder, crime and violence, and limited consequences for breaches of the law have for too long characterized Jamaica's security landscape. The political, economic, social, cultural, and infrastructural divides that continue to plague our society, these directly benefit criminals. Criminals profit when there is a divide in strategy and policy in the government. Criminals profit and benefit when officials fail to publicly acknowledge, affirm, and endorse the heroic efforts of our security personnel when they face off with heavily armed criminals. And here I want to acknowledge the bravery and perseverance of our security forces.
And there are important lessons that we should take into account as we seek to consolidate this particular consensus. First of all, is the recognition that the levels of criminal violence, and in particular murders, represent a fundamental threat to the survival of our country. And that we ought to be very realistic about what has happened and face the fact that for the 58 years of our independence, there has been a steady upward movement in the graph where violent murders and criminal violence is concerned.
Consequently, the law-abiding among us must continue to work together to ensure that we have the forces to win the civil war against those in our nation who decide that they will not be law-abiding. Today, we have a wonderful example of the nation coming together to erase forces so that we can win against this epidemic, we can win this civil war. And I just want to conclude by thanking everyone for getting us to this point and wishing for Jamaica continued movement in this process.
The forum had three main objectives.
If we as a country can find the basis for agreement on the critical priorities and remove from the political space the competitive, convenient political practices, then we can make significant progress. So we need to figure out what are the policies that work, the initiatives that work, and maybe the leadership styles and strategies that work, and ensure that there are continuities across governments, across administration. And the only way to get to that is to have this kind of consensus.
It is hoped that achieving this consensus, the country will reap the benefits of seeing a reduced crime rate in our society. The summit comes a little over a year after a crime and prevention summit was held at the Jamaica Conference Center on July 30, 2019. For the news on PBCJ, I'm Marlon Samuels.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness has praised the security forces for recent operations which saw the elimination of some of the island's most wanted criminals. He was speaking at a crime summit at the Jamaica Conference Center on Monday.
In the community of Catadupa and that area, which was literally in the clutches of a criminal gang, in 2018, I received a call from a member of parliament, and he was literally on the verge of crying that the community was captured by a criminal gang, to the point where public transportation passing through the community had to pay a toll. The police station there was shut up. Policemen were literally under pressure, afraid in that community in 2018. One of the criminals that was a part of that was being hunted down from that time. He was only a few days ago caught and dealt with within the law. On Sunday, we saw where the police force, again, acting on intelligence, following the proper procedures, have confronted these very dangerous criminals. And when they do this, and they act within the law, and they take on these criminals, we must commend them. And we must ensure that the criminals understand that the government, meaning the administration and the opposition, is at one in dealing with these dangerous criminals, but we are at one in dealing with them within the law. And I believe that you are seeing unfolding in front of you as citizens of the country, your security forces beginning to display what you have always wanted them to display: a respect for law, themselves being officers of the law, acting on intelligence, acting strategically, and even if you don't get success right away, you act with perseverance and patience. Eventually, you will start to yield the results. And so I want to commend the security forces today. Continue to act within the law. Continue to act strategically. Continue to act on intelligence. And continue to be persistent and to persevere against the criminals who have held our communities in the clutches of fear for far too long. I'm certain that the community in Clarendon and in St. James on the border of Hanover, that those communities today feel free and liberated, justly so in our independence period.
On July 22, security forces killed Delano Wilmot, also known as Preke Boy, in Cambridge, St. James. Wilmot had topped Jamaica's most wanted list since 2018. Also, two of Clarendon's most wanted men, 25-year-old Leon Rose, otherwise called Hitler, and 24-year-old Zamar Nelson, otherwise called Terminator Boy, were among 6 persons killed during a police military operation in Buzzrock, Effortville, Clarendon on the weekend.